Good afternoon, Quasar Markets Live. We've got a really exciting one for you. It's exciting for me because I've watched him all the way back to his ESPN days. I've got Doug Kezirian here. Doug, how are you doing today?
Doing great. I'm so glad we connected and we're able to, find a time to chat because I think it's really interesting with what you're doing and the financial space and then where the sports betting is as well.
Absolutely. I've been following you since the day ESPN, but could you tell me a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I started out in the conventional broadcasting space, and I say conventional, but there really is no conventional path. There's a common path, and I guess those words can be interchanged. But basically, I've always said being a sports host or anchor or presenter, as they say in Europe and Australia, is it's kind of like minor league baseball. You start out in single A and go to double A and triple A and then the big leagues, but you're starting out on air in single A. So it's the mailroom of cities, but at the president, if you will. So I started out in Missouri, then Iowa, and nothing against those markets, but they're beginner markets for many people. Not all. Some are from there and stay there. And I have friends who've stayed there that aren't even from there. And so what you do is you climb the ranks, and obviously salary goes up, and there's bells and whistles, certain technology at certain companies, and it works out well if you grind and you catch a few breaks. So in 2005, my third TV market was Las Vegas, and so I was working the local ABC affiliate here, and this was before the Golden Knights, before the Raiders. Heck, even Mayweather was pretty boy back then. He wasn't Money Mayweather. So he was fighting at the Thomas and Mack. He wasn't even fighting on the Strip.
Right.
And so I covered betting as sort of like the local beat. Think about if you're in the media, like in San Antonio, when there's only one major professional team, or Portland, although they have the Timbers now, the soccer team. But it's really just a different market. The Padres only have San Diego now. So betting became a thing. And like any local, you have to create content, and then you have a 30-minute Sunday night show. So I went all in on betting, and I was always into betting growing up. I'm the youngest of five brothers, was very sports dominant household. And then I took to betting, just like looking at the numbers and the sports pages that had it all. I was always fascinated. I have an econ degree, and so maybe that's part of it. And so, all through, even before that, like I grew up in LA, I was like an intern and then a stringer for the LA Daily News. I was sports editor of my newspaper. I wanted to be on ESPN and do SportsCenter. And so while in Vegas for 7 years, I honed my craft, so to speak, during the economic crunch of 08, 09. And so the industry had, just things got delayed. And then eventually I did get to ESPN. I got an interview and got the job and loved it. So I was doing SportsCenter, radio, and all sorts of, Baseball Tonight and all the fun stuff that you could imagine. And it was, in fact, a dream job. And then there were layoffs and other things happened. So I ended up pivoting to within ESPN to the betting space because they knew I had this Las Vegas background. And then obviously the ESPN training on air, it just seemed like a logical fit for me. And we launched the betting show. And then after a couple of years, they moved everyone to Las Vegas. So I was able to cut the ribbon on the studio out here and do everything. So I was at ESPN a total of 11 years and life-changing. There's no other way to put it. It was great. It opened up a bunch of doors. I got to learn from the best producers and really gleaned a ton of wisdom. And I ended up pivoting on my own. And as the graphic says on the screen, partnered up with someone we launched a sports betting media company because we are of the belief that the betting space would eventually realize its shortcomings and where it was, and that we could provide a help to a lot of networks. Concurrently, we wanted other revenue streams. So we didn't just want to be one thing. There was ways to do the content different ways and meet the needs of different partners and clients.
Sure.
And right now, the betting space is very elementary. We say in a political way, oh, it's only in the top of the first inning right now, meaning it's going to grow, it's going to evolve. But really what it is right now is bad in my eyes. And what do I mean by that? Well, before betting was legal, or at least the federal ban was removed, there was really just a limited sort of like depth of the betting space. It was content, which a few podcasts here and there, and now that's growing. And then the tout service, which is financial advising, if you will. But there's so many other parallels in betting that you can create that are parallel with other industries, right? It's such a new industry. And so I tried to think of like ways we could do parallels. And so the betting content space, the joke I say is it's right now it's like the news anchor or the weather person giving out financial stock picks.
Absolutely.
They just gave everyone a betting analyst, sports betting analyst title.
Yeah, I've been blown away because I've had a few people that I knew well in DC that all of a sudden were working for MGM doing shows in the DC area. Who I'm like, wait a second, these folks don't. That's not their background. That's not what they do.
It's reckless. It's irresponsible. Yeah. And the way they've sort of stomached it, if they spun it as a lottery, like what are your favorite lotto numbers? They're doing $1 part, and I'm okay with that. If you want to spend $1, a couple bucks on a 9-leg parlay and have some fun for the day, that's totally fine. It's like cracking open a beer and whatever.
Yeah.
But I also think there should be parallels with the market and understanding if people want to, learn a lot more, right? You can go fishing once a year. You can go like fishing every weekend. The people go every weekend want to be evolved and be experts and be more passionate about it. And so we've created a product that fits the needs of those people. But we also have media where we can do content that meets the needs of providers or partners. And in the last year, Yahoo Sports changed their betting, got rid of their betting person and things like that. Nesson in Boston canceled their betting show. Stadium in Chicago got rid of theirs. What these companies are realizing that we knew, but they're eventually realizing, well, they're all doing it the wrong way. Even ESPN was doing it the wrong way, and I was banging my head against the wall. They're doing it a certain way that appeases the advertiser, i.e. the sports books.
Absolutely.
And they're not really serving the better as the viewer. And that's just, frankly, that's the ESPN way in a lot of ways. They do things the widest net possible that they think is good TV that may have worked a long time ago, but it may work on NBA Tonight or NFL Live and stuff, but it doesn't work on every show the same way. Every show should be done differently. And that's fine. Like maybe they've changed. I don't know. I haven't watched in a while on my old show, but I just know that I can do betting content a certain way that fits the needs of the sports bettor. And I think that's the smart way to do it. So what we do is we know potential partners, whether it be like we're going to be launching a syndicated show in about a week or so at SNY in New York. Yep. Like we can do a betting show for New York that meets the needs of New York's sports bettors, that is interesting, that is compelling. We have a certain host I can bring in, certain segments I can do. And I know how to, thankfully, all my training at ESPN and I know how to create content in an interesting and compelling way that also is betting. See, the problem is a lot of these producers aren't sports bettors, and the higher ups are not sports bettors because betting was illegal, right? So why should a suit, for lack of a better term, in his 50s understand betting? It's like when esports launched, like they didn't know what esports is. They're just like hiring a 30-year-old. So all these people who have the ESPN, who have the TV training, don't know betting, and all the people who have the betting background don't know TV. And they just wouldn't listen to me and things like that. So I'm doing content and people are like, wow, this is a really good demo, blah, blah, blah. So we're trying to give content, a third party, provide betting content for a lot of partners at a very discounted rate. Because if you think about it, these networks have to hire talent, producers, graphics, manpower, sunk cost on cameras, and all that stuff, video rights. And we can do it all and then obviously high speed internet and Google Drive and all that stuff. So that's our concept on the media side. But diehard sports bettors, for lack of a better word, aren't aching for treetop, clean, fun sports betting content like maybe Nesson would be. So we have diehard content, and that's where my background is really unique, is because I'm a pro sports bettor. I have pro bettor contacts, and so I'm able to run it. So it's sort of like the Motley Fool concept.
Absolutely.
Because remember in the 90s, that's where we are in the betting parallel. We're still very early.
I've noticed that exactly. You've just described what we're doing at Quasar for financial markets. Is we're not here for entertainment. We're here to educate you. We're trying to level the playing field so that, the retail trader has the same ability that the institutional trader has. And that's why we work on getting the experts like yourself. And we're going to talk sports gambling. I don't have an 18-year-old kid who was just given a gig somewhere. We're looking for experts. And it seems like you're doing that same thing. And, I love the connection or the parallel you've had. Are you seeing too? It sounds like you are. I've been railing about zero DTEs and all the stuff that's going on in the option world of financial markets. To me, it's almost been too much gambling. Are you seeing that people are leaning towards these parlays, like you're saying, the 9-leg parlays that the guy's talking about on my local radio show?
It's a good question. And so I'm a bachelor in my 40s. I don't know what the kids are doing these days, right? I see it, and I know that's just not going to be me. It's almost like Ronald Reagan and Walter Mondale. Like, I'm not going to hold it against I'm going to lean into what I do. Like, I think my gray hair is an asset. Like, I have the scar tissue in the betting for doing it since I first moved to Vegas, like I said, in 2005. I'm not going to be the guy shirtless on a speedboat in Miami calling myself the Dr. Parlay King and trying to promise the world. Like, if people want to do that and follow it, I can't. I can only lead the horse to water.
The same. People want to bet on meme stocks or meme coins, go for it. But I'm going to tell you I'm not sexy. I'm going to tell you to buy Bitcoin before you buy, the next meme coin.
Right. And but I'm also not like myopic either. So I have a guy on my staff who's like late 20s who wants to do a segment. He's like, and we're going to start it. So it's called Vet the Bet. Like, the veteran's going to vet the bet. Okay. And we're going to do an interaction where people can extract and learn and amuse. He's like, how does this bet lose? Like, these 4 legs on the parlay. And it's like, probably not, so I think it's going to be good for people to witness and observe my thought process on some stuff. And it's just a fun interaction instead of just my speaking to the camera. Right. And so there are ways to create content around this type of phenomenon, but I know what works. I talk to odds makers who know what works behind the counter. Right. And then I have access to professional bettors, and I can answer a lot of questions. So, like, I've started a Discord thread and things like that, where I do want to be hip and go young, because the demo of this industry is mostly young, but the people who want my insight are actually older, and they're more like, not that they're just looking at it as a retirement fund, but they have more of a stock market concept rather than just 50-leg parlays every day and trying to go strike oil with a $1. Have fun, throw a Hail Mary. I mean, just look at what the books are promoting. They're promoting these like $1 things for a reason, right?
That's right.
It's their way to print money, right? I've been banned or limited at 6 books, things like that, for a reason, not because of my $1, parlays.
Right. That isn't. So they love when those come in, because let's face it, again, like I just said, 87% of zero DTEs finish outside of the money. That's, their numbers even much higher than that, I bet, that finish outside the money.
Right. And I post every play I've ever made externally. We track all our units. I'm very transparent. I think I've done videos where it's like, hey, we're on a little bit of a cold streak right now. This is when you pull back units, so I try to do teaching moments. And I also try to do market observations. I try to do bigger picture stuff where, the information is so valuable. So, for example, if I told you on a Monday what's going to happen to a stock price by Friday, that's like gold, right?
Right.
Okay. So I know during the football season, I can tell you 2 or 3 point spreads on Tuesday that will move in a certain direction. That's pretty valuable to anyone that knows what's going on.
Absolutely.
Now, it's not a straight, we call it scalp, but arbitrage or whatever, where you can just buy and sell a -3.5 and take +4.5. But you can create middles, i.e. arbitrages, where you can do that and people will salivate. And someone might say, well, how do you know what's going to happen? Well, what happens is the books have obviously technology, and they profile their flagged accounts. And flag doesn't mean they're blacklisted. It just means they're like, they have their attention.
They move the market.
Well. Yeah. Like, I have a flagged account at some place, right? So what happens is, if, I've talked to an odds maker, I'll be like, hey, they're like, yeah, Colts is going to go up. Why? Well, this guy's bet 12 bets all year, and all 12 have gone his way. So if he's betting the 13th one, I'm going to guess it's going to move his way. And that's just something I can get. Now, there's nothing illegal about it or anything like that. And I may be doing a story. Now they're not going to tell me his name, his social security number, or anything, right? But they know. So what happens is, I know how to read the screen. Just think of a Bloomberg screen. So so if you want to buy, I don't know, Coca-Cola, there's only one stock price for Coke, right?
Yep.
Right. There's one Wall Street. So we have like 11, right? You can buy the Lakers at DraftKings, FanDuel, Caesars, MGM, whatever, right? Offshore world. And pretty much they're all going to be -8, whatever it is. But some might have 8.5 months. Some might have -8, and then some more transaction cost of juice. And so I'll talk to an odds maker. I'm like, why are you guys shading, the Lakers? He's like, well, yeah. So then you sort of, and I know if there's a market move, who to talk to. So I was like an insider at ESPN for the betting space more than I was an analyst. I did both, but they wanted me on the scoop because I had these 2 decades
connection, because that's what matters. Absolutely.
Right. So I wrote columns, I wrote things, and I nerded out a little bit. And yeah, it wasn't as cool as going on SportsCenter and giving your 3 favorite plays. But I was like, hey, this might be interesting. Why is Patrick Mahomes an underdog at the Super Bowl, right? Like he was last year with the 49ers. But they didn't want to talk about that. It's like, okay. It's like, sorry, I thought this would be pretty interesting. But every network missed that. They had 2 weeks to talk about why Patrick, because every sports fan's like, well, I'm betting on the Chiefs. So don't you think it'd be kind of interesting content is why is Patrick Mahomes an underdog? But they didn't want to
call out their big investor / partners / commercials.
Yeah, they want some young person to give out 3 picks, and because that's fun, and it is fun, but it's also like dangerous when it gets in the wrong hands. So if you look at some studies and things like, so I'm just going to do it my way, and I'm obviously going to adapt and evolve. And if same game parlays and there's an edge and think totally, I get it. I don't have my head in my sand. Like I said, I'm not myopic, but I know what works. Now we have a team and we're expanding and we're evolving with other sports because you can't do every sport perfectly, just like you can't do every industry as one analyst. My skill set is being able to extract winning information from any sort of breadcrumbing. And that's what I do when I talk to a lot of people. That's just experience, right? So my best sport is actually the WNBA.
Really?
Because I've been following it like 5 to 7, 8 years. And my main guy is a modeler, and he models like referees and a bunch of stuff. And I know how to extract stuff from his information, even though he does bet. I'm more experienced of a bettor. And he's like, oh yeah, I didn't think of, like, I'm like, well, why don't you just do first quarter line or first half line? He's like, I didn't think about that. That's a good point. Or team total. Why not just do the team total instead of the spread? And
it's amazing how much
ways. Right, you extract it. I can listen to all this stuff and tell you what the best, most logical way to bet a game is once you give me the right data. Not 100%. I mean, I don't bat 1,000, but you just need to be, certain 57% to do well. And that's the other thing. It's like the fantasy space lives in the gray area. Like you can say, hey, I like, Jared Goff this weekend, and the guy can throw for 280, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception and be fine. Like, fantasy people can live in the gray area, but in betting, it's binary. It's either win or lost. Absolutely. And so that's why none of these places put their records up. That's why none of these places did, because they're not experts. Just think about this. If you're watching CBS pregame on a Sunday morning in the NFL, and there's Bill Cowher talking and some other guys who play in the NFL, won a ring or whatever, replace them with like weekend flag football players who know what, 11 guys and what a flag route is, but they're not. That's what's going on in the betting space. They're taking weekend flag football players and making them NFL analysts. So that's what they're doing with betting analysts. And over time, it's going to run its course. I mean, I was even over Super Bowl. We were at a meeting with a potential partner, and I won't name names, and they said, why isn't it working? Like the content. I'm like, because bettors and it's the boy who cried wolf. You have a bunch of people who don't know what they're talking about. And some do. Some are okay. But just because they know what a point spread is doesn't mean they should be a betting analyst. And the best ones are like Cousin Sal and stuff, who's really a betting personality. So if they just made everyone a betting personality, it'd be fine because people would just be having fun. But they gave him betting analyst title, and then people are, on eggshells. They're trying to be an analyst, and they're trying to sound smart and talk about value, and they don't know what they're doing. They have no experience, and it's nothing against them. Less than 1% of people make money.
Yeah.
Very
really that bad? Less than 1%. I thought it was bad in the world of day trading, where it's about an 84%, 85% burnout rate that blow up their accounts. I didn't know 99. Wow.
I'm talking like influence the market, make money consistently. I know pro bettors who have like a losing baseball season. Doesn't mean they've lost their magic touch, but it's just like counting card. Like, you double down on 11 against a 5. It's not a guaranteed winner. The math, right?
Same with stocks. We're trying to use historical incidents to predict the future, and or mathematical equations to predict the future in the case of sort of blackjack and craps and those things. Right. you know. Yeah, and one of the things that you brought up that to me I loved about looking at your site, like you said, you put your documented wins and losses right there on the site. It's easy to see. It isn't hidden. I also noticed you do give away a lot of free stuff here too. In fact, I'm going to bring
we
up
try
the
to do
website.
a free video a day, and then any news story. So we have news stories like, oh, so-and-so is the new favorite for the Wooden Award as I'm looking at the screen, or hey, Wembanyama's out for the year. Who's going to win Defensive Player of the Year? So those are all free. So we just write, a few paragraphs, just newsy stuff. And then we do I try to do a free preview on the big game. Now it's not like my favorite play necessarily, but it's what I'm hearing. And what this is, and this is what we're trying to do in the packaging of the information in the videos, is we're trying to, it's almost like the cliff notes of betting. Like we're trying to value your time. Absolutely. And even if the pick doesn't win, like you could tell a lot of work went into this video. So in a 60 or 90-second video, we're giving you everything you need to know, right? And so people just want it. That's sort of the Motley Fool thing, right? We're just summarizing what we know, summarizing what we're hearing. We're basically, if the word aggregating was a more common term, that would be like the name of the site. We aggregate everything based on our
information for us. Yeah.
And we present it. So, I mean, like anyone in life, you want to build your own startup or your own company based on your skills, right? Whatever your strengths are. So mine's aggregating, extracting that info, and then presentation, TV, right? So if I was like this Pulitzer Prize winner, writing, whatever, then I would write a bunch of stuff, right? But my experience is on air. I understand I understand presentation, I understand video, I understand graphics. And so we do videos. And that's just the way of the world now with Instagram and TikTok. But we have a TikTok world. So I want to present everything in a pretty quick summarize. And you at least have information. And sometimes like people want to know what not to bet. I mean, some of this is just helpful information. It's like, the market moved from 3 to 4.5. At least Doug told me why he's passing on the game. But at least my opinion, it's just helpful. And it's just, we have a personal assistants in this world. You're just helping someone's life, because no matter how rich you are, you still only have 24 hours in the day. People have busy lives. But if I can just get you these 3 videos in the morning and 5 videos I had yesterday and just serve it on a silver platter for all the big games, and I get to see what Doug and his team are doing, which unit sizes. I mean, our betting card's broken down into unit sizes and everything. And then we do alerts. We have our own app, so I can send out in-game alerts. Like I said, a Discord thread where I share my analysis. Somebody gets injured mid-game, I'll give out alerts like, hey, keep an eye on this. Or what we do is we call them, it's kind of like a pro tip. It's a plus pointer. So we have only players plus. So it's a plus pointer. And it's like, hey, this happened last night. Just in case you were wondering why why the market did this. This is, I talked to an odds maker. This is why it happened, for future reference. So it's like an interesting sort of fun fact if we're on the tour.
Right. Well, and it gives more insight into what does go through the sports book's mind in some of these things, which I know as again, we want to know what the insiders are doing. As you said, we want to know what the pros like yourself are looking at, because we often hear it, right? Smart money and retail money. I want to learn from the smart money, not just a retail money that's sitting there because he's got a YouTube station or it's because someone gave him a title. And I think that's the key. And as you said, one of the big things to look at is that you document everything where it's very hard to find that information on other people. I actually spent a little time this morning looking at what I would call maybe the competition, so to speak, and none of them had transparency.
Correct. For a reason. A reason they don't have it.
Well,
but that's okay. I think we're playing the long game. We're playing the transparency. And if I end up dying on that hill, so be it. But I do think there's an approach that is smart in that regard, because I think, when you have a small company, we're not a huge network and all this stuff where we have a bunch of mouths to feed and all this overhead. Like, for example, every human being needs water. Okay. If we were selling water, our market share right. But not everyone's looking to spend money on the betting and financial advice. Right. So there is going to be a market cap that's a lot less than water. So if we just have certain overhead and then a certain price point, we can do pretty well. And then you can expand in like the content space and just be better. If we can launch syndication here in one market, then and you start to grow. And so the syndication model, it's not quite Pat McAfee. It's more like the TMZ, right? TMZ started as like a little show on WB, and they grew from, they had some cool graphics, but they were in the bullpen of the cubby holes and all talking stuff. So if we can grow syndication, obviously that reach is limited, right? Homes and obviously YouTube channels, things. But in terms of the subscription service, there's always going to be a cap to it, but you never know where the industry is going to go either.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, no one could predict, or not many predicted, what we've seen in the advent of who is these consumers on a lot of these DraftKings and FanDuels, where they have a lot more women than we thought. Right. Like you said, the younger age group's very well represented, but so is the older age group. Like you said, I have more uncles and things like that tell me they've got FanDuel accounts than people in my generation, quite honestly. So it's funny to see. What do you see? Do you see an evolution? Do you continue to see these player props and these, 9-leg parlays continuing to grow? Or do you think the market starts to get a little bit smarter? We've seen the evolution in the crypto world where the meme coins are starting to fall off. People are starting to get a little bit wiser to them. Do you think that happens, or do you think all the bells and whistles are going to keep people coming?
Yeah, I think so. I think from an operator standpoint, the menus have to stay vast because that's your competition's doing that and people like it. And I think the consumer likes it because it's easy to digest. It's easy to bet on Luka Doncic's points than it is like the Lakers -7.5. Like it or not, people just understand that more because I think the fantasy overlap, they're more seasoned in that, or more legible. Like the betting is more legible. Much like the average NFL fan is more advanced because of the Madden football game, right? We just grew up knowing what a QB waggle is or whatever. And so I think the operators want to push the parlays. I also think the networks are comfortable with that because they're $1, $2 lottery tickets, and they're getting their advertising. So I think it's a way for everyone to coexist. I just don't think it's going to be solid for the demand of the content. I don't think you can go on and promise do content on 9-leg parlays and guys screaming at the TV. So the content space is where I think there's most to grow in that regard. But I also think bettors are just not rushing to listen to 2-hour podcasts and 1-hour betting shows because there's no reward like nailing the game yourself.
Right.
And there's enough confirmation bias, right? Like you could be fine and lose money long-term, but if you're 50%, that's okay. And experts are like 56%. So you can be on listening to a show and some expert has a pick that loses. That's confirmation. Like they'll want that to lose subconsciously. And then they'll want their pick to be right. And so that guy's know what he's doing anyway. I'm just going to do it. And it's easier. It's just, so maybe it may not be the get rich quick plan, but there's enough confirmation bias and sort of like the lazy approach, for lack of a better word.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Doug. We're going to have you back for sure. We're going to have a lot more questions. Thank you. Like I said, what it really amazes me, everything you were saying about what you're building is what we're building here. That's and awesome. Trying to level that playing field, trying to teach people that on financial. And we are trying to teach them on the sports gambling sites because it is such a big part. And we see the interlap of the two, or the overlap. And as I've said to you before we came on, I find that a good poker player makes a good stock trader. So keep that in mind. You could always come back and do some stock picks with us for sure.
Well, that's great. We did create a 40% discount for anyone who's interested.
Oh, that's right. I forgot to put that in. Let me get that across the bottom here.
Code is just Quasar, just your company in all caps. So we created that coupon. So again, if you want to just check it out, or if there's any questions, just email us at info@onlyplayers.com, or hit me up on Twitter and DM me and things like that. But we're passionate about the space, and we do want to legitimize it. Like we want to go on TV with a graphic that says up 61 units in college basketball this season. Instead of the people hiding behind it's too hard to track it all. Like I want to have graphics say it, and we do on our videos. The graphics say, whatever we are, and go try it. It is what it is.
I was looking back. You were. I had a laugh because there was a couple in there that I was looking at. Caitlin Clark to win the WNBA. Gordon Minshew to take the first snap was a big winner for you. Like there's some fun stuff. While you talk about that it is fun to see that stuff. I'm like, I would have done. And that's it caught me because I was like, that's what I would have bet. I like those type of.
Well, yeah. I mean, think about it. If you know this stuff, like odds makers, like these sports books aren't adding odds makers when they expand the menus. They're just making them do more work. Like the Olympics, it's like, hey, Jimmy, you got swimming this year. It's not like they go hire a swimming expert. So if
Yeah.
you know sports and you know the right people, you can just give me someone who knows a sport. I'll figure out the betting stuff. Just have them talk to me about a game. So that's what I do. I pepper friends I have or colleagues who know something, and then I just take their information and apply it through the betting lens into the market.
That's awesome. Thanks again so much. And viewers, please, I will tweet it out again with the code here. It's Quasar, 40% off at the site. That's at onlyplayers.com. Doug, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
You got it. Thanks so much for having me, man.